My name is Vinay Raman, and we have started another new episode of the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast. I call it the Blind Spots podcast. And let me tell you a little bit about what the Blind Spots podcast is all about. There's two fundamental beliefs that I have and number one is that 99% of all business issues and success lies in understanding employees. That's number one. Number two is all great leaders are concerned not about the data in their company and the KPIs and all that kind of stuff, visualizations. They're worried about the stories and the behaviors and the processes that are emerging in their organization. Because if they understand those processes and those behaviors and the stories, they can change the ending. It's like a fairy tale. You can choose the ending of the fairy tale if you know where you are in the book. So the Blind Spot podcast is all about bringing the seasoned veterans and the experts and the coaches who've seen some of these narratives occur in various businesses in the various perspectives that they've had the opportunity to enjoy and bring them to you. I like to say, I'm going to talk to all the people that you need to talk to so you don't need to spend the time. You can learn from the guests that I have in just a couple of moments. So I want to do a little bit of housekeeping real quick. I want to tell you about what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. On June 15th, I've got Sarah Davis, who's going to come and talk to us. The topic is called Punching Through the Business Glass Ceiling. And what does that mean? How do you get through it? How do you see the glass ceiling in the first place? On June 10th, I've got Adam Seymour. He's going to talk about this idea of feelings that lead to a better bottom line. Gosh, if you'd asked me 20 years ago, do feelings matter? I would have probably kind of given you a funny look. Now, feelings that people have matter a lot, especially in retention and their productivity. Adam's going to dig into that a little bit. On June 8th, I've got Garland Vance, and he's going to talk to us about the data behind better culture in pest control. He's worked with a number of large companies in various geographies and lots of different environments. He's going to give us a little bit of an insight as to how that works by some of the numbers. And today, I've got the benefit of bringing on a guest, Nadege Minois, and she's going to talk to us about the compelling numbers behind building a diverse culture. Nadege, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very fine, Vinay.
Good. I am really excited about our topic today. Two more things I want to do, and then I want to get into our conversation here. I want to talk a little bit about our sponsors. We've got our first sponsor, which is Corralling Chaos. Corralling Chaos is a company that does culture assessments, and anybody who comments in the chat throughout the course of this is eligible. You just need to say who you are and where you're connecting from. You could be anywhere in the world, or you could be right next door. That's perfectly fine. If you're interested in getting a free culture assessment that Corralling Chaos does, they'll tell you how aligned you are as a company and where some of those blind spots are. Type something in the comments. Just tell us who you are and where you're connecting from. We'd love to see that as well. And then Carmo. Carmo is a sponsor of this. They do data-based assessments of companies, so you can start to see by the numbers through the KPIs how aligned your company is as well. And they'll do an assessment for you as well. Just comment and tell us who you are. But that brings us to the point of just jump in. Get more out of this conversation for yourself. Nadege has got a fantastic set of a body of evidence and expertise, and I think you'll get a lot more out of this if you say, hey, I got a question about this. So please feel free to ask your comments. Don't be embarrassed. I have lots of questions myself. You'll find that out. So let me introduce you to Nadege. I was really excited about having her on just when I started to learn a little bit more about her. So the name of the company is Coaching Vision. She is the founder of it. And she got a PhD in France, her native country. She's worked and lived in 4 countries, including the United States, Germany, Austria, and the UK for over 20 years. And gosh, that just seems like a whole podcast in and of itself. The lessons learned there. We're going to try to distill some of that here. And she says during this time, she learned so much about cultural diversity and the consequences of not understanding each other. And just from 4 different cultures, I got to imagine people are talking past each other. They may be using the same language, but how they interpret and how they receive it is completely different. So there's mismatches there. She said, I've seen so many teams underperforming because people could not understand each other, even though they may have been using the same language. So this led her to create her own business to help people and organizations understand and use cultural diversity to perform better. Nadege, that's I make this joke that right there seems like a 5 beer conversation for me. There's so much to dig into. So
Mm.
again, for anybody who is listening in, I'd love to hear your comments. We'd love to hear your comments, and please challenge me and dig into Nadege's background. So Nadege, let's start out with cultural diversity.
Mhm.
Why does it matter in your mind?
Well, it matters because the first thing is that it is here. It's a fact. We just can't avoid it. It's all around us. Okay, especially in a world where people have been moving more and more to different places, in a world where with the internet and the appearance of social media, we can connect and chat with people from all over the world. Cultural diversity is here. So this is definitely something we cannot avoid. And it's absolutely a great. It means that people have different ideas, they see the world differently. And so when you begin to open your mind and learn how these people see the world, then you also will begin to see the world differently and say, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And so you will grow as a person, as an individual. So in a nutshell, I think that's why cultural diversity is important.
So I always like to think about blind spots, and I think I've heard one, if not two already, right? Number one blind spot is I always like to, someone told me something once that if, as you start to change your belief is when you can change your behavior. So if you want to get better, you need to change your beliefs so that you can get better.
Yes,
Blind
yes.
spot number one here is that cultural diversity matters because it is here and it's a fact. It's not something that is kind of coming 15 years from now, like electrification of all of our vehicles, which is coming over the next number of decades. It is here today. And
Yes,
if you're not recognizing that, you might be a little bit behind the 8 ball.
that's right. That's right. Absolutely. It is here, but unfortunately, it is still the case that even if it's here, some people just don't notice it. Some people actively put barriers not to see it. Some people just don't notice it because they don't notice it. It's kind of unconscious, and anyway, it's still the case that a lot of us actually live in a rather small microcosmos. So most of the people we interact with are very similar to us, especially in terms of culture. And so it's not factually for that many people that on a daily basis they will interact with people from different cultures. Or what happens is that the interactions, if I can say, are forced, like in your business, when you happen to be part of a team with different people. Basically, you have no choice. These people are your colleagues. You have to work with them. So even if it's here, um, it doesn't mean that people will embrace it, will see it.
So I'm constantly, furiously jotting down notes because my mind is going as you're saying this. And a couple of things I heard there is when you see from a different perspective through someone else's lenses, it actually almost forces you to see more effectively because there's the old saying or the old story of you've got 3 scientists in a room and all of them are blindfolded and there's an elephant in the room. They don't know it. One of them sees the tail, one of them sees the side, one of them sees the trunk.
Mhm.
If you don't have the right number of perspectives, you don't have the right perspective, you won't know that it's an elephant, right?
Absolutely.
So diversity is an opportunity for us to put, I'm extending the analogy here, uh, put more scientists in the room.
Yeah, Yeah, no, that's
The,
right. That's
the
right.
other thing I heard here is that as we tend to live in microcultures, chosen or not, and it may, again, intentionally or unintentionally, especially if we've been doing the same thing. We've been in business for 15 years and we've been working with the same people for 10, 15, 20 years. We've always
Yes.
known them. The way that they think is going to start to homogenize. It's going to become similar. It's going to be
Hmm.
narrowly focused, tunnel vision, if you will, over some time. That
Yes.
means you've only got the scientist who's standing at the trunk of the elephant and not in the side and the back. Am I saying that right?
Yes, definitely, definitely. When you are always with the same people, um, ideas tend to converge. Yes, and over time, it's true that you might lose the creativity, innovation, and the different perspectives. That happens in a lot of groups, which means that even if you begin with a diverse group, you may still end up with a groupthink.
Hmm.
So which means that diversity in itself, you have to maintain this diversity and you have to maintain the power of diversity, because even if you begin with a diverse team, if they spend a lot of time together and go around the same topics, um, over time, you might still end up with a convergence of ideas, the number of ideas narrowing, because then they kind of think as a group.
So I'm curious to anybody who's listening in. We've got people on Facebook, on YouTube, and also on LinkedIn Live. This
Mm-hmm.
is a live session. I would love to hear from anybody. Do you feel like these micro? Do you agree with that statement that microcultures over time, as they spend more and more time together, they probably become more efficient working together? But that's because there is a narrowing of focus. The process becomes more,
Mm.
and that becomes that group think. So I'm curious, is anybody listening in? Do you all have you evidenced that? Do you feel that that's true? You start to create that group think over time, and it actually limits your ability to see broadly, more holistically. Um, Nadege, I want you to tell me a story. I'm a little kid at heart. I love stories. Tell
Stories.
me a
Ooh.
story about a company or an organization that you went into where you saw some of this microculture groupthink um, evidence. Tell me a story about that.
Ooh, gosh. Um,
And I think
yeah.
what I'm really looking for there is
Mm-hmm.
kind of how where it started in an organization, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
culture, and kind of how they weren't aware of it, or maybe you made them aware of it. What did that look like? Or tell me some of the examples in all your travels. I mean, for 4 different countries that you lived in. Tell me about how they were talking past each other.
Um, I, th- I think usually what I've seen, I'm not saying that it's the truth and it's what always happens. That I would say that's my interpretation on
Hmm.
things. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's always important when you talk about culture and things like that, you see it's my view of seeing it, if I can say here. Um, and what I what I've seen sometimes is that it it actually may not be that people begin to think the same,
Okay.
but that there's also, so that's one way it can happen. But I haven't seen that happening because it really takes time, and personally I haven't seen that happening in an organization. Okay. um, but what can happen is that over time some voices can take over
Hmm.
in the group, and basically you kind of have a dominant view of things, which could also come from the personality of the people. But what can happen is that you try to bring ideas, but some people are not really listened to, because the group is not inclusive enough. And so then basically you just lose some voices. So the people are still there, but you don't hear their ideas anymore, and people just go with the dominant idea or with the majority idea. So that is what can happen. What have seen happening, definitely.
So this is interesting. I was approaching that or thinking about things a completely different way. So revelation for me here, right? What I wrote down is that the groupthink could be driven by leadership or by a dominant personality, and it's not so much that everybody kind of comes together and agrees on what they're saying. It could be that one person is holding the torch and says, "We will all follow this torch," and that's what just over time they become those other ideas, those other perspectives go mute. Am I saying that right?
Yes. That's what sometimes I had the feeling that it's what was happening. Suddenly over time, some people basically just getting quiet and just going with the flow at the end. And yes, because in a way, if you have a group think, but really where everybody says, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is what we think is the best at that point in time, then that can be a sign of real inclusion. The group comes together and define what is going to work for them as a group. And so they follow these ideas. But then it's when you need to change ideas. And as long as the conditions are the same and it works, I would say it might not be a problem, but we know that the world is changing so fast. So we know that the situation is not going to last. We know that any businesses needs to evolve, to adapt. And it's then that if you don't take advantage of these different ideas, different point of view, and that you have just one type of thinking, one type of ideas, then that will prevent you from fully adapting and from being innovative, because you've lost that power and that advantage that diversity can bring.
So a quote comes to mind. I'm starting to find that I love my profound quotes. If you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go long distances, go with others. And I think that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yes.
If you want to be able to make quick decisions, you want to be able to move in a very agile way. At some point in time, having that dominant voice saying, "We're charging north," that might be the time and place. But if you want to keep that sustainable, potentially as a business unit or an organization, you can't do it that way, right?
That's right. Because you can lose that sense of belonging, that people, okay, well, we just do what we're told, and we don't have a voice, we're not valued.
So I'm saying in real inclusion, the collective decides what makes sense, not the leadership. I shouldn't say leadership, the dominant voice, right? Am I capturing that properly?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. If you want to be inclusive, everybody needs to be heard and genuinely heard. It's just about doing a survey, gathering answers, and not doing anything with them. Also, we've got the answers, and that's it, basically. So genuinely heard. But then being inclusive is also finding a way of working together. And it may well be that the group decides that the leadership takes the decisions, because in some cultures that's just the way it's done. And so as a group, even if the people are different and might come from different cultures, they might decide that as a group that will work better for them. But as long as everybody is heard and that everybody is comfortable with what is going to happen, um, to me, that's already a big step towards being inclusive.
So inclusion is about finding a way to genuinely allow all to be heard.
Mm. Mm.
Gotcha. So tell me. So back to my childish self stories.
Yeah.
Share some share some stories with me, or step me through a process that's happened that you've seen, which is what kind of drove you into the business, for example. Where did you see something? Can you give me some examples?
Um, yes. Yeah. So basically, what I've seen. So before developing my business, I spent my career as mostly a biologist and then in project management. And so it was mostly in higher education or in research institutions. And it's not just that it was in different countries. So I was exposed to the culture of the country I was living in. It's that they were very international places.
Hmm.
So, we're talking over 70 different nationalities, usually in places. And there are just many examples. Just for instance, people um, don't understanding, and that's not just cultural, but not understanding and not being nice, if I can say, with all these people for which the working language was not their first language.
Hmm.
Um, and also not understanding that people don't know something about the place. Well, we're not from that country. We just can't know everything. You even can't know everything about your own country. So, let alone different countries. Um, then other examples that I've seen are just like little remarks that people will make, like just about the food served at the cafeteria, because depending on your religion, on certain days you're supposed to eat a certain type of food or not, and and of course, usually when you have so many different people, they have to cater for everybody's taste, and just people don't understanding that why do they serve that kind of food on this day they're not supposed to, and also you begin to challenge the person, say, well, look around you, how many people do you think have the same religion as you do here, for instance? So it's all this little misunderstanding, that you just don't think, you take things for granted the way you see it the way they're supposed to be, and you just don't think, and then you begin to say something, and that shows that you haven't switched your view, basically. And it's just so many examples I've seen in meetings, getting into arguments, because people don't understand others' point of view. It's not that they don't understand what they say or the ideas, but it might be how they say, or if suddenly somebody gets angry and another person will think it's absolutely unprofessional to show that you're angry. But for that first person, no, it's not. It's not inappropriate from their cultures. And so I've seen that happen many times, in just all these little interactions, those little conversations that you have through the day. And so all that, kind of accumulates. And then people got ideas and begin to judge other people. And all that has repercussion when they really have to work together.
I've heard, and I think I believe that acceptance of behavior is, oh, well, tolerance of a behavior is acceptance of a behavior in a culture. And when people look, if somebody's angry, uh, I come from a culture where getting angry and losing, people start to immediately think anger is confrontation. That's not. The anger, I've started to realize, at least for myself, when I'm starting to get angry about something, there's a frustration level that I have. It's not necessarily with that person, it's necessarily with myself, right? It is a
Yeah.
feeling, it's an emotion that I have. I'm getting frustrated about something.
Mm.
And I've tried to shift my own language, saying "Hey, something's happening here that I don't like, right? And I have caught myself in the past when I've gotten angry. I would immediately lash out at the person who is making me angry, saying, why are you, why are you calling the sky blue? It's purple, or whatever it is. Right? And I think what I'm hearing here is that people haven't given each other the space, or what I'll use another, not intentionally rhyming. They haven't given them the space to express themselves, and instead of have just kind of muted that voice, said, "You're getting angry. That's appropriate. It doesn't happen in the meeting room, in the conference room."
Yeah.
When in fact, the reason that they're getting upset or angry is because something is bothering them, and you haven't addressed the issue at all. Am, is
Yeah.
that am I heading in the right direction there?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. No, that's right. That's right.
So
Yes. Yeah.
what is the I like to think in terms of impact. What is the impact of you quieting that voice and saying, "Hey, there's no room for anger in this conference room"?
Well, the impact is that you will alienate the people for which showing your emotions, whatever emotions you show, is appropriate. Especially if it's not a decision that has been taken by the group, but it's just that that's my way, or that's the way here, and that's it. And the impact is not that you're going to make that person less angry. The anger will still be there. So it doesn't solve the problem at all. It might even, it will be worse because you're going to lose that person, basically. So you're going to lose that voice in the team. Or the other way around, if the person really doesn't want to accept that, you're going to make it louder, but in a negative way.
So, one of the first things is, I said is cultural diversity matters because it is here in a fact. The second thing I wrote down was when you see from a different perspective, you see more effectively. The impact that I heard of quieting that other voice, saying anger is not allowed here, is you're not solving the issue. You're just passing over the issue. You're just disregarding the issue altogether.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you are now potentially limiting your ability to see more effectively.
Yes.
And I think the pushback to that might be saying, well, it's junk, it's their anger, it's useless, it's not effective for me.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is you don't know until you actually investigate what that diverse opinion is,
Yes.
and until you include that in opinion. So
Yeah.
am I seeing that right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, I always like to think of myself, and part of the reason for the Blind Spots podcast is there's what I know, and there's the things that I know I don't know. But there's that's only 50 or 60 degrees of 150 degrees of viewing, right?
Yes.
The rest of the 210, that's most of what is I cannot see at all. I'm not even
Yeah.
aware of.
Yes.
What might be on the other side of that anger is all of this.
That's right.
Right?
That's
The other
right.
210 degrees that you cannot see.
Yes. Yes.
So you are limiting your ability to make good decisions as a leader or as a dominant voice, as an organization, if you just push it to a side.
You are.
Have you seen? Are there any examples of where you can see that a poor decision was made or that a poor conclusion was arrived at as a result of them quieting that voice?
Yes, some incorrect decisions have been made. Have seen that, or either I would mean incorrect in the result they had. So basically, people were suggesting different things, but no, it was not taken upon, and the decision taken at the end didn't bring the results that were expected. Another way is that, decisions that if people don't buy in the decisions, it's not going to work. So I've seen many times team leaders saying, this is what we're going to do in our team. This is how we're going to work in our team, or this is the system we're going to work, because it's a system I know, I used to work with it, I like it. So that's what we're going to use. That's how we're going to do things, without taking any input of the members of the team and what they thought, or even if they didn't have a say on, no, we're going to use something else, but at least a say on how they could use it and how they could see it working. No, it was just, no, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to use the system. This is how our team is going to work. And many times what I've seen is that it was not working. It was not working because at the end, the people were just not using the system. I've been part of teams like that. I have to say, the people were just not doing what they were supposed to be doing on that point, because they couldn't see the benefit. They were not explained the benefit, and they couldn't see. They didn't have a voice into why and how we would do that, and how it could work. And basically, all they could see was just an additional thing on the thing they had to do. And so these are some examples.
So I'm curious to anybody who is listening in. First of all, if you're hearing something here that's interesting to you, please let us know. I would also be curious if you've ever been in a situation where you didn't buy into a decision that was made. I've got to assume so. And how did you feel on the other side of that? That decision was made, you didn't buy in. Did you support the outcome? Did you try heart of hearts to make sure that it succeeded? Or kind of were you already stewing off on the side saying, see, I told you so. Right? And no matter what happens, you're just there to say, look, I was telling you, didn't bother listening to me. So I'll prove you wrong. I'm curious if anyone has been in that situation. I've heard a staggering statistic that, at least in the United States, 74% of all employees are disengaged. And that's a staggering number. It's hard to, it's a big number, but what does that really mean? And someone finally put it into a way that I could understand it. And they said, so think of it like this. If 74% of people are disengaged, for every $100,000 you pay in payroll, in expenses that you pay, or payroll that you pay to your employees, $76,000 of that $100,000 is just flushed down the toilet. It's gone. You'll never see it again. It's wasted. So you get 26,000 out of every 100,000. Wow, that's a terrible investment. Do you agree with that number? Does that surprise you in terms of the magnitude of that size number, or that disengagement? $76,000 going down the drain.
Yes, yeah. No, I have to say that 74% is really, really, really high, and so here you really see that there's a big a big gap from what people want or what people are looking for in a job and what they have really in their job. And I would say here, I don't know where it comes from. It could be just it could be so many different reasons that somehow the hiring process is not in line, is not designed to hire the people who want to work for you. If people disengaged, if they realize that they don't want to work for you, there's something that they don't like, is that somewhere in the hiring process there's a disconnect, and either you're not looking for people who will want to work for you, or you don't present your company the way it really is. Of course, we always want to show our best profile, if I can say, but somehow you don't communicate that culture. You don't communicate what you are about, and you don't look for what people are about, and so then you end up with this mismatch. Then it could also be that also you claim some values that you have, and here we talk about diversity. So you could say, or one of our value is to be inclusive, and people say, yeah, great, that's great, but then on the ground there's nothing to show that, because but it is your culture, is the behaviors that everybody does in the organization. And it is the behaviors that you say are appropriate. And if your behaviors, if the actions do not align with the value, you may present great values, but if you don't show them on the ground, people say, oh, well, but actually that's not right. That's not right. Your values are just words. So there are all these kind of different reasons for which people can be disengaged.
So give me some, a couple of questions that are coming up from your thoughts. Number one is that this idea of inclusion,
Mm-hmm.
you're disregarding potentially valuable perspectives, right? It's kind of with that, the idea of the disengagement is someone who continues to be sidelined or whose voice is quieted will become disengaged over time. And I think that's happened to many of us. Or that's probably why we've changed jobs, right? Or
Yeah,
roles or professions.
that's right.
So it happens to all of us. Yet it still persists, right? It still continues to be a problem. So I'll say we're not learning from our mistakes as a collective people. I know I've worked for organizations where I know when I was a teenager, I was working a summer job, and I would always ask my boss, my supervisor at the time, why things were done a certain way, and he would say, "Just do it." And at some point in time, I said, I don't want to work here anymore because he doesn't even want to tell me.
Yeah.
So the question for you is how this is an inclusion starts with an individual, right? And how receptive an individual is to others. How does someone start to embark on that journey of being more inclusive? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where would you tell them to start?
Asking questions. Be curious. So basically show that you care about people, you care about who they are, about what they think, whoever they are. Just show some interest in people, and listen to them. So we come back to this idea of listening. And so you need to understand what is important for people. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is that you need to be ready to change. Because I had a conversation recently, and somebody I thought had a very nice image about inclusion, is that basically you've got these different people, and your organizations, what you've done is, each person is a piece of a jigsaw, and you've put the jigsaw together, and you've got this clear pattern that is your organization. And then you have these new people coming in. And what you do is, it's not that you try to fit them in as you can into the existing jigsaw. This is not going to work. You have to redo the jigsaw. And basically, to redo the jigsaw, it's not just, fitting new pieces where you can. It's basically everybody has to change a bit. And everybody is kind of reassembled to end up again with a clear picture. So being inclusive, it's not just about being nice to people. Of course, you want to be nice to people, but you need to understand them. But being inclusive is really being ready to change. Okay, how do we change to include these new people, their new ideas? It's not about trying to fit them into whatever your culture is, because your culture will always evolve with the new people coming in. So to me, that's the main part of beginning to get inclusive, to be ready to change. Being inclusive, it's not just welcoming somebody into an existing group, is to be able to understand if and when the group has to be reshaped, or the culture, at least of the group, has to be reshaped and rethought, redesigned.
Couple of things I'm hearing here, right? Number one, first step, and first of all, inclusion is a personal issue. It's not a organizational issue, right? It starts with the individual, right? And the first step towards that is seeking to understand, asking the questions, as you said, right? And I think maybe the second half of that is seeking to understand, not to get them to see your viewpoint, rather so that you can understand their viewpoint, right? You're not trying to convince them. You're simply trying to say, I understand your perspective. Now, Nadege, that doesn't mean you have to do what they say, right? It never means that you have to do what they say, but you give them the space to speak and say,
yeah,
I understand what you're saying. You think the sky is purple, but that's because you wear red glasses. I look at the sky without red glasses on, so the sky doesn't look blue to me.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, right? And maybe even inviting them to see it the way you do is valuable too, because then if you do have a culture in your organization that you want to sustain, you say, as part of that hiring process potential, or they're already there, say, I understand what you're saying, and I truly understand what you're saying, but here's the future that I see. I'd like you to see that also. Would you consider that, right? Not, hey, I'm right, you do it this way, or the beatings will continue until morale improves, right?
Yeah.
So
That's right.
So seeking to understand is about this belief that you are potentially ready to change. They might be a nugget of information that they have, a perspective of information that you haven't considered before. Now, someone might push. So the first thought I think that would come to mind from someone as well, gosh, that takes so much time. How do you respond to that?
Yes, it takes time. That's right. But I don't see it as something extra you do. It's not you do all your things and you do inclusion. No, it's about how do you change the things you do now to make them inclusive. So yes, it's a lot of work, but it's not something that you add. So that's the way I see it, is how do I adapt? How can I think about what I'm doing now, what the organization is doing to make it more inclusive? And yes, it's not an event, it's a process, it's an ongoing process, especially in growing organization and organizations that may have a high turnover. And here, if you begin to have a high turnover of staff, just say, okay, oh, there's something wrong. It's usually not always because of the people who leave. You need to begin to question really what you do and your culture. So it's definitely an ongoing process. But here I would point out, you mentioned that inclusion, it's an individual thing and not really at the level of the organization. And to me, it's both. It's
Okay.
both. The organization as a whole needs to be committed to inclusion. If not, it's not going to work. So it is at the organization level, right from the top, at every level, that basically the organization has to be committed and say, we're going to do something. But then it becomes individual because, as I said, it means that people will need to change. People will need to open their mind. Ways of working will change. Procedures may change and processes. And so then it is an individual because everybody will have to adapt. And that inclusion, the organization can design and involving people, almost everybody, if they can design their strategy. But then the implementation, it's the behaviors you see every day on the ground about what people do. And here it's about everybody. And here it's about the individual level. And which is why it's important to work at all these levels, to work at the strategic level, but then to work with all the people to actually to tell them what diversity is about. Because a lot of us, we just don't know. If I ask a lot of people, how do you think cultures differ? Fundamentally, of course, a lot of people just won't have an idea because it's just not something that they've really thought about. And it's not just about having different food or wearing different type of clothes. It's a lot deeper than that. So you need to bring this knowledge to people that they know what they are facing, because however much empathy you may have, and you need that, but that's just not enough. That's just not enough. If you need to be more inclusive, you need to be able to put yourself into others' shoes. But if you don't know the shoes they're wearing, how can you put yourself into their shoes? So it's all these different levels. So the strategic at the organization, the knowledge, bring the knowledge to people, and all that then is translated into inclusive daily behaviors shown by everybody in the organization.
So inclusion is at a personal and a cultural level, right? The organization as a culture must support and expect and hold accountable people to be inclusive, right? But the change and the implementation of that inclusiveness is at an individual level. So when somebody at a meeting gets frustrated and angry and says, I can't stand XYZ, I don't like this, this is outrageous. Instead of people saying, that's not allowed in here, say, I understand that you're angry and I'm curious what got you to this level. that there's so much emotion behind what you're saying that it came to this point. What have I not been hearing to this point where it got you to such a level? Right.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
So it is holding individuals accountable to seek understanding, but it is that culture in that room or within the larger organization or company, whatever else it is,
Yeah.
that must hold people to be accountable to that inclusion.
Yes. Yeah.
Because on the other side of it, that person and the person who has that anger, there is a frustration because they see the world in a particular way that it does not make sense to them. It does not
Mm.
fit with what they believe, whether their ethics, their spirit, the the logic, whatever the case may be. They see a
Yeah.
perspective,
Yeah.
and you're just dismissing it. It's worth taking the time to understand that and kind of come back to this idea that it takes more time. It's not that it takes more time because I was just watching a documentary on the Ottoman Empire and the overthrow of the Roman Empire,
Mm-hmm.
and how Constantinople finally fell. It had been a stronghold for 1100 years in the Roman Empire, and how there was on the Ottoman Empire. And I'm not siding with either side. I'm just simply saying the way the tactics were run by the Ottoman Empire was, we're going to keep trying this, we're going to keep trying this, and they kept meeting failure after failure until ultimately a perspective came in, and the the leader of the Ottoman Empire said, that's what I'm looking for. And it's that diamond in the rough that you need to find.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're not constantly asking why, what's happening, what do you see, you may never find it. Right?
Mm. That's right. That's right.
Hmm.
And it is in everybody. This diamond. It is in everybody, in each of us. So you need to find your own, and you need to make that heard, but you need to hear the others too.
I tell my children, I hope I am good about doing this in practicing what I preach. And I tell them, I said, I may be the smartest man in the world, but the man on the mountaintop, or the person on the mountaintop, the man or woman on the mountaintop knows it's raining before I do, no matter how intelligent I am. So it's not about how much I know; it's about the perspective from which I know. And I
Yeah.
think that's the core of what we're talking about here. If you need to make sure you
Yes.
have the right perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that we're open to different perspectives, and that we can hold different perspectives in our mind at the same time, because our knowledge will always be limited. Uh, that's the way it is. Our knowledge will always be limited, our personal knowledge. But when you begin to look at the group knowledge, that's not the case, and that's something that also culture does. You know. We tend to think that people like the same thing we like. They do the thing we do. They watch the same things on TV, or the same movie, or listen to the same music. So it's really ingrained into us that we think that a lot of people are just like us, because that's what we've been exposed to most of the time. And but no, so you need to open, because what you know is always limited. So you really need to open, definitely.
I think one thing you said was that it's they may know something you don't know, and I think many people take that as an affront to their position and their role. Right? It
Yes.
is okay not to know something. Actually, in my mind, the true mark of strength is when you admit failures and you say, I don't know. Because
Mm.
I usually start when I introduce myself as, I made one more mistake than anybody else in the world. Let's just get that on. Let's put that on the
Mm.
table.
Mm. Mm.
There's much
Yeah.
for me to
Yeah.
learn.
Yeah. 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 No, that's true, and that's also cultural. In some cultures, um, and especially depending on how you see hierarchy and status. But in some cultures, the boss has to know, the leader has to have the answers, and if you ask your team for their ideas, or that you say, well, I don't know, I think about it, and it's what is this guy doing? Why is this guy the boss or this woman the boss? If this person doesn't know what they're talking about. So yeah, they're still this reluctant. But no, we don't know. We don't know everything,
Yeah.
obviously, and we've got to accept that. And even if we think we know, it
You
might
don't.
not be correct. You don't. It might not be correct. It's not the only way of seeing things. There are things that, yeah, we know, and at least for the moment, we think that, yes, okay, that's for sure. The laws of physics and that kind of things. But again, you never know. It might change. We went to from Newton to subatomic physics and quantum physics, and suddenly, so you never know what is going to be next. So
Yeah, I saw the way someone expressed it to me once, and I like the way this goes. Is what got you here is not what's going to get you to tomorrow, right? All that you've learned is enough to get you to where you are today, and
yes,
that's why
yeah.
you're here, right? But if
Mm,
you want
mm,
to get to tomorrow,
mm,
you want to go to a place you've never been before. What makes you
yeah.
believe that you already know the
Mm,
path? You haven't been there
yes,
yet.
absolutely, absolutely. Yes, that was there was a book with a similar title, I think. Well, what got you there? No, what got you here won't get you there.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know that.
Yes, 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 yeah, yes. A similar title. I don't remember.
Well, for
You
all
should
those
quote
we're
me.
coming. I'm sorry.
No, 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 no. Go ahead.
Well, for all those that have been listening in, I hope this was a value for me. I got again. I continue to be impressed myself how many notes I can take and how much I learned in the course of 1 hour. Gosh, doing it is the next thing. Implementing it and thinking this way. So, thanks for listening in, Nadege. I really do appreciate you taking time and sharing some of your perspectives on how the world works and a narrative that I don't think enough people pay attention to. I think that is the way we all need to start to think. So,
Thank you very much, Vinay, and thank you for giving me the opportunity of being here in the Blind Spot podcast. That was great.
well, what everyone should expect is in the next, these podcasts are live now, so you'll see them on YouTube, Facebook, and on LinkedIn. They'll be out there under my profile and under the Carmo profile. You will start to see us over the next couple of weeks dropping little nuggets from what we heard here in small little video clips, and hopefully in the very short future, you'll also start to see you'll see the show notes and the podcast notes that give us the summary of what I took here. Because if you're listening, I'm was seriously writing fast so I could try to capture all the things that Nadege was saying while also paying attention to what she was saying. I feel like I was a student in class yet again. Thank you, Nadege, for your time.
Thank you very much.
Bye.